As President Lee Jae-myung makes his diplomatic debut at the G7 summit in Canada, we have our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young in the studio to discuss this significance and also the outlook for his global engagements. Soo-young, it's always good to have you with us.
Oh, it's lovely to see you in the evening, Tammy.
So Soo-young, let's begin with the significance of President Lee Jae-myung's attendance at the G7 summit. What does it mean for South Korea?
Sure. So this occasion, it not only serves as an opportunity for President Lee Jae-myung to make his diplomatic debut, but also reaffirms South Korea's position in the world, signaling that it is very much back as an essential actor in global governance. And this, of course, follows months of leadership vacuum after impeached President Yoon Suk Yeol's martial law declaration last December. Now, South Korea is not within the top 7 economies, but it is indeed an essential partner economically, technologically, and also militarily for the world's biggest powers, given its key position in essential supply chains and so on. Now, South Korea has been invited to the G7 as an observer country since 2021 during the Moon and Yoon administrations, except in 2024 when Italy was the host.
Right. Now, when it comes to Lee's bilateral meetings, wasn't there a high anticipation for a sit-down with U.S. President Donald Trump, who, by the way, left early, right?
That's right. So Presidents Lee and Trump, it would have been their first summit after both leaders took office earlier this year. And well, it is customary for the South Korean and US leaders to meet early in their terms to reaffirm the bilateral alliance. However, President Trump, he did appear focused on the escalating Middle East situation, which of course forced this early departure from the G7 summit. So it was a missed opportunity for both sides. Their first face-to-face meeting would have signaled the strength of the alliance and perhaps addressed even dialogue opportunities with North Korea, given the recent easing of inter-Korean tensions, and most of all, produced some top-level progress, perhaps, on the ongoing bilateral tariff discussions. Now, with the July 8th deadline for renegotiating America's reciprocal tariffs, President Lee was expected to push for a postponement during his meeting with Trump. Now, this would ideally allow more time for working-level talks, negotiations to narrow down differences over tariffs on Korean steel, semiconductors, and automobiles. Still, experts remain quite positive that Washington could be receptive to its partner countries in the near future.
I think we're hearing from the United States, without involvement with Korea, within Trump administration, we are hearing words that there is a possibility for the July 8th or July 9th deadline being pushed further back. Further delays may be possible, and Trump may be considering that. And I think U.S. Treasury Secretary has mentioned such possibilities. So I think Korea should capitalize on that possibility and not hurrying for any kind of a hurried agreement to be signed between the two sides.
Also, there's still the possibility of Lee and Trump meeting next week if they both attend the NATO summit in the Netherlands. So, Tammy, we'll have to see how things develop.
Right, NATO could be another setting for the two leaders to meet. Before I let you go, Soo-young, now about President Lee's pragmatic diplomacy he's been mentioning, let's recap what the approach is and how it'll apply at the G7 summit this time.
Sure, it's a very interesting concept. Since his electoral campaigning days, President Lee has really emphasized that the South Korea-US alliance remains the foundation of host diplomacy, and also that he will maintain the trilateral cooperation with Japan. He also intends to deepen partnerships with Europe, Southeast Asia, and global South nations. And now that's quite similar to previous governments. But what sets it apart, though, is the greater focus on South Korea's national interest.
Number one, preposition that this current world is no longer the liberalist world that Joe Biden administration of the United States wanted to promote before the U.S. election last year. And so what's happening is this is a different world. In this different world, we can call it realist world rather than liberalist world. And in this realist world, what we need is to maximize our capability to protect ourselves, Korea, national security, and so on.
So strategic calculations and partnerships will be made in line with what's beneficial for South Korea's economy and security, rather than grouping with ideals. Now, this marks a clear departure from the previous Yoon administration's value-based diplomacy, which involved joining diplomatic initiatives based on shared ideology and upholding the US-led world order. Now, this Lee administration believes that Seoul needs to work on its relations with China and Russia, for instance. President Lee's second Vice Foreign Minister Kim Jin-ah last week emphasized the need for South Korea's diplomatic autonomy, working with various partners in diverse areas to reduce its dependence on certain countries, is what she said. So I would say President Lee's pragmatic diplomacy is about flexibility and realism than being bound to ideals or values.
Indeed. So the G7 will be an occasion for President Lee to put his theory to the test.
That's right, Tammy.
All right, Soo-young, thank you as always for coming in.
Thanks so much for having me.